Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome to another Friday night at Paranormal Review Radio with your hosts, Anthony and Luci.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show tonight.
You know, people have asked us why we do our show on Friday nights, and we say, why not? For most people, their work week has ended, or the kids are finally put to bed, and it's our time. It's our time to explore the things we're interested in and start our weekend with a little paranormal knowledge.
And have we got a great show to fuel that paranormal knowledge tonight. But first, let's share how you can participate in tonight's show. As always, our phone lines are open, so give us a call. We want to hear your thoughts and your questions. The number to call is 661-244-9831. And if we don't get to you right away, please stay on the line and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Also, our chat room is open. Please feel free to interact with us or make new friends. And lastly, our Facebook page, Paranormal Review Radio, has some great follow-up information and daily paranormal news and fun insights. So come on by and like our page. Anthony, let's start the show.
Tonight we're going to talk about black-eyed children. This phenomenon has been on the rise in recent years and basically started as a blog on the internet about 14 years ago by a journalist named Brian Bethel. But are these black-eyed kids real, or is it just an urban legend? Well, on our first show on black-eyed kids back in 2011, Luci and I explored all the stories and acclaimed eyewitness accounts. But tonight, we will get to the root of this phenomenon and talk to someone who has studied and researched this topic and talk to people who have had claims of meeting black-eyed children and wrote about it all in his book. Tonight, we are excited to introduce Mr. David Weatherly. Mr. Weatherly is a paranormal investigator and author. For over 35 years, he has explored the world of the strange, investigating cases around the country and abroad. He has written and lectured on a diverse range of topics, including cryptozoology, ufology, and hauntings. David has also studied shamanic and magical traditions with elders from numerous cultures, including Tibet, Native America, Europe, and Africa. He has appeared on numerous radio programs, including Darkness Radio, Project White Paper, Haunted South, and Paranormal Live. He is a writer and contributor for Intrepid Magazine, which is a great magazine, and is the author of the book, The Black-Eyed Children. Welcome to the show, David. How are you this evening? And I want to add, happy belated birthday to you.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for having me on. I'm doing great this evening.
Great.
Hello, David. Welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you.
Anthony mentioned before that we did a show on black-eyed children back in 2011 and thought that we should revisit this phenomenon since it's been increasing in sightings, not just here in the U.S., but now it's spread all over the world. Do you find this to be true, David?
Oh, absolutely. Even since I started investigating the topic, the number of reports continues to grow. And it's one of those things that initially it did indeed appear that the phenomena was only in the United States, but slowly more and more reports have begun to surface from countries as diverse as Australia, South Africa, London, England. Virtually everywhere in the world at this point has some encounter with these black-eyed children.
Mm-hmm. Now, Anthony and I heard about this phenomena after speaking with Dave Schrader from Darkness Radio at a convention in Colorado at the Stanley Hotel last year. And we just became amazed at the thought of little kids with these big black eyes creeping people out and with such a sinister feel about them. How did you get involved with these black-eyed children, and why?
Well, I've always been interested in the paranormal, was investigating from the time I was just a teenager, as a matter of fact. And as a result, people around me always knew I was interested in the topic. And, of course, over the last 10 to 15 years, the paranormal has become more acceptable. We've got a whole plethora of television shows, and people are more open about talking about these topics now. It wasn't like that when I first started in the field. You really had to, it was like pulling teeth to get stories out of people. But it really, I've seen it change pretty dramatically in my time in the field. And so in the early, in the early 2000s, I met a gentleman whose name was Paul. His story is documented in the book, and he was, I'm sure anyone who's involved in the paranormal probably has encountered this type of person at some point. On the surface, he was a complete skeptic. He didn't believe in anything supernatural, paranormal, nothing, and made jokes about it all the time. But he was also one of those people that couldn't seem to leave the subject alone, and that to me says this person has either some kind of agenda or they have a story that they're, wanting to get out. So this gentleman was a prison guard, was a bodybuilder, martial artist, 6'3", very intimidating man if you didn't get to know him. Finally, after, known him for quite some time and him constantly joking about the paranormal, I ran into him one day when I was having lunch. And he asked if he could join me and sit down, and we started talking. And out came his story. And he prefaced it by saying, remember, I don't believe in any of this, flying saucers or Bigfoot or anything like that. And this gentleman told me about his encounter with a pair of black-eyed children. Now, understand at that point, I had heard about the phenomena. It was one of those things that was interesting, but at the same time, it was right there on the border. I didn't know whether this was an urban legend that was created through Internet stories or whether there was something more to the phenomena. I wasn't really hearing about it a whole lot, and I certainly hadn't met anyone at that point that had encountered them. But sitting down and talking to this man who, by anyone's standards was a very intimidating person, almost break down and was visibly shaking by the end of recounting his story to me, and couldn't understand why he had had such a fear reaction from a pair of children. And he had wrestled with it for a long time and was still trying to understand what exactly the encounter meant. And he was hoping that I could offer some answers to him. And unfortunately, at the time, I was able to tell him very little because there just wasn't really that much known about these kids, and there still isn't a whole lot known about them. The encounters are certainly increasing at a dramatic rate, and I've gathered a lot of pieces of the puzzle, I think, through researching and writing the book.
Well, we should explain what black-eyed children are all about for some of our listeners who may not have heard about them. David, can you explain what they are and what some of the characteristics are?
Sure, just the basics. As the name implies, they are children that have black eyes. We're not talking about the pupils. It's the entire eye, the pupil, the sclera, all solid black. They generally range in age, in most of the descriptions, from about 8 to 10 years old up to early teens, 13, 14. That's the greatest number of reports fall in that age bracket. They usually are described as having pale skin. Sometimes it's perceived as being almost artificial or plastic-like in appearance. They show up at people's doorsteps, beside their cars and parking lots. hotel rooms, even a boat. The stories are endless. They show up all of a sudden, and they request entrance. And their speech is very monotone. They tend to repeat the same things over and over and over again. Most people feel that there's some type of attempted mind control or hypnosis that's occurring. And they try to convince the victims, for lack of a better word, to allow them to come inside or to invite them inside. Mm-hmm. So one of the curious things about this phenomena is it actually has traits in common with a lot of other paranormal phenomena. You know, they share traits with the classic vampire mythos of, you know, not crossing the threshold until they're invited inside. They share traits with the Men in Black. You know, the Men in Black are often described as having this plastic-like skin and awkward use of language. They usually vanish very suddenly, not before someone's eyes, but there are a lot of cases where the person will just turn around for a moment, and then when they look back, these children have disappeared completely. So it's a fascinating phenomenon, and that's one of the reasons, because there are so many possibilities as to what this phenomenon actually could represent.
David, do you think that it's their physical appearance, or is it the manner that they speak that makes people fear them more?
Well, I don't think it's either one specifically. I think that these children are able somehow, whether it's on some vibratory level, you know, we don't really know what's happening, but somehow these children are producing an incredible level of fear in people. And, you know, as I referenced earlier, this gentleman, Paul, who was just not used to being afraid of anything. I mean, this guy had seen, you know, brawls and prison shankings and you know, things that most of us never see. He wasn't someone who was used to confronting something that made him afraid. But these two children standing on his doorstep terrified him to the point where he slammed his door, you know, ran across the room, and ended up going and getting his firearm to try to chase these children away. And that was one of the things he expressed to me was, you know, I can't come to grips with the fact that despite all my training and despite the lack of any outward threat, these children terrified me. So, you know, this harkens back to something like, you know, we see these types of reactions, for instance, with infrasound or some types of frequencies can cause people to react in this manner. So we really don't know exactly what these children are doing, but somehow they are producing this incredible level of fear in the people that they confront.
Okay, so some people, you know, they may say that this is some kind of hoax that kids are playing on adults. They're using black contacts. They're playing tricks. What do you say to that theory?
I had a very long discussion with a skeptic who tried very hard to convince me that that's what was going on. And in fact, it was one of the first things I looked at when I started researching the topic. The first two things I explored were, one, the possibility of it being an urban legend, and two, the possibility that it could be attributed to hoaxing. And there's a lot of practical things that come in when you talk about this being a hoax. Now, one, yes, black contacts are available. They're rather expensive. You have to purchase them off the Internet. I explored it to the point where I talked to some of the people who sell specialty contacts for costuming, and spoke to a number of people actually who have worn these things to see, you know, just, hey, are these things comfortable? What happens when you wear them? And, you know, my conclusion from that perspective is, one, it seemed a little absurd for kids to go through that amount of trouble to pull a prank that they really weren't getting any satisfaction out of. And to further pursue that possibility, I utilized a number of teenagers and had them talk to their network of friends to find out if, you know, if anyone of that age range had found knew any stories or knew of any kids who were using this as a prank, and they all think it's absurd. Now, I have kids myself, and anybody who's a parent can tell you, most teenagers these days, they're too interested in texting and figuring out young romance than to spend time and a ridiculous amount of money to drive to a town where nobody knows them, to go and knock on somebody's door for a quick little scare, and then to run away. So it's just an invalid argument as far as I'm concerned. Are there a few hoaxes out there? Absolutely, but that can be said for any aspect of the paranormal. Right. So, somewhere along the way, there's actually a lot of reports I get of black-eyed adults, which I did not cover in the book, partially because of this aspect. There are a lot of people who are into sci-fi and fantasy, role-playing, costuming, these types of things. And some of those could be hoaxes attributed to that. Sometimes the stories are that the person looks familiar. Oh, I've seen this guy in the neighborhood, and then he showed up and he had black eyes, and it's like, okay, well, this is probably explainable. But the cases of the kids and the ones that I've documented, no, absolutely, it's not a hoax.
Okay, so in your research, while you were doing this on these children, is there one thing that sort of changed your mind from thinking that, as you mentioned, it could be an urban legend, to maybe this is something more real and more complex?
I'd say it's a combination of things. The more I talked to Paul, whose story I documented, the more I became convinced that his experience was real. Just because of, I guess, interviewing so many people over the years for things about the paranormal in general, you develop a sense of body language, of when people are being honest or when they're not telling you the full story. Mm-hmm. Those things really come through in interviews. And so I think a combination of that and some of the other people that I interviewed for the book that related their encounters to me, they don't have any reason or motivation to fabricate these stories. These are people that almost across the board, they don't want publicity. They don't want to go on television. They just want to understand what's happened to them, what have they encountered, and what does it mean. So, a lot of these people, I mean, it's like talking, very often it's like talking to a trauma victim, to tell you the truth, because these people they have a very difficult time getting beyond the encounter that they've had.
Well, you've written this book, Black-Eyed Children, and it's available now through Amazon.com or directly through LeprechaunPress.com. And I do have to say, this is a must-read for all paranormal enthusiasts. What went into writing this book? How long did it take you? How difficult was it to research?
I had gathered the stories for, a lot of years. And it's funny you mentioned Dave Schrader earlier, because I've been on Dave's show a couple of times. And, about 2 years ago, I was on Darkness Radio, did an interview specifically about the Black-Eyed Children. And at the time, the book was actually, the concept of the book was a little bit different. It wasn't specifically about the Black-Eyed Children, although they were a component of it. After that interview, I just had a huge response from listeners. And I started to realize, I think, at that point, that this was something that more people really wanted to understand. There were even more encounters out there. That's around the time when a lot of the international encounters started coming to me. And I decided, I'll shift the focus of this and do it specifically about the Black-Eyed Kids. And that's indeed what I did. The research, a lot of it came together fairly easily because having been involved in the paranormal for so long, I had sort of, during my time investigating this phenomena, had looked at some of the possibilities, were they alien hybrids, were they demons, a lot of the those are the two most common assumptions that people make when they first hear about these things, that they're either a demonic entity or that they're an alien hybrid. And that was two of the first things that I explored. And sort of along the way, in my research had recognized traits from other different types of phenomena. So sort of tried to bring that all together in the book. And the book, the second part of the book is really an examination of similar entities and how they might relate to the black-eyed children. And, of course, most of the book is a study of the black-eyed children themselves and different possibilities, exploring each possibility, for instance, the alien hybrid theory and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know what? Anthony and I have said this all the time. Okay, in this day and age, with technology at our fingertips, camera, cell phones, all of that, has anyone ever recorded these children?
That's an interesting question. If you go on the Internet, obviously there are tons of photographs. I occasionally get some that, the person sending it to me will say, this is a photograph I took of a black-eyed child. I pretty much discard those simply for the fact that it's so easy to create something like this. I mean, in just a couple of minutes with a minimal amount of knowledge, you can take a person's face on digitally manipulated to make it have black eyes. Now, what is interesting is in some of the cases that I've detailed, there are occasions when the encounter happens in an area that has security cameras. There's one really interesting case that, there were security cameras in this building. The person had an encounter and later on thought to go and check with the person who was responsible for the security tapes. And it turned out that the system just went down mysteriously during that period. So what I find is that a number of cases that are valid encounters, the recording equipment that's in the area seems to mysteriously malfunction. Which, once again, interesting enough, harkens back to Men in Black stories who are notorious for interfering with electronics.
And, David, it also can go back to what you were saying earlier about that sort of vibrational frequency that they use to sort of hypnotize you and instill that fear. It could be then that interference with, electronic equipment, basically.
Absolutely. And, let's be honest. I mean, the fact is that a recording of these kids really wouldn't make any difference to skeptics or believers, either one, just because it could be hoaxed so easily.
Right. I mean, the same goes with, everything in the paranormal field, basically.
Exactly.
So, with all the theories that are out there about these black-eyed children, either it being vampires or interdimensional beings, jinns, or alien hybrids, what do you believe that they could be?
What I believe is that they are something similar to the jinn. I know a lot of people tend to think that these are jinn in this guise. I don't really believe that, but I believe there's something similar. I think there's some kind of interdimensional being that has an ability to, shift into our level of awareness or our reality. And I'm not entirely sure what their purpose is, but I do believe that it's sinister because nothing really good seems to come out of these encounters. And the closer the encounters, the more tragic the circumstances seem to be.
Now, you've studied the Native American elders. Do you know if any Native American culture have these black-eyed children in their history or in their stories? Have you ever heard of anything within their cultures?
That's something I've been exploring and really trying to sit down and talk to with various Native friends of mine. It's difficult because what happens is the further back you go, and this is explored somewhat in the book, a lot of people argue that, the black-eyed kids, these black-eyed children didn't show up until the Internet stories. Well, no, that's not really true. It's just that that's when the specific term came along to describe these kids. What I found was going back historically and looking at different accounts, the term wasn't used, even though there might have been an encounter with a black-eyed person. cultural or time period dictated how it was described. For instance, there's an encounter in the book that happened in 1950, and the story was that this young man who had encountered this black-eyed child, he had an encounter with the devil, is what everyone assumed, because this was a rural farming community, very simple earth-centered people, and as far as they were concerned, this was the devil himself that showed up on the road to encounter this young man. So the black eyes were part of the story, but they were not the focal point. And I think that's why we had to explore a lot of earlier cultural stories and connections to find out exactly what's going on here. I spoke to a number of Asian people, and they firmly believe that these are manifestations of what they call a hungry ghost. So through different, looking at this thing through a different lens, time-wise, I think we'll find a lot more answers. So to answer your story, no, I haven't uncovered any native stories that I'm comfortable talking about at this point, although there are some indications here and there that, yes, there are encounters in some of the native lore.
Why do you think the reports have sort of increased in the last 10, 12 years? Has it something to do with paranormal, or is it just people are just noticing it more and commenting? In the day and age of social chats and websites and Facebook and all that stuff, it's just that communication is being brought out more than it was years ago. Is it that, or do you think that the actual activity has increased?
I think it's both. Anthony, you make an excellent point. As people are more open socially, they're networking more. I mean, we can get information from across the world in the blink of an eye now. So, people are information traveling faster. The number of encounters, I do firmly believe, are increasing because I think these beings, whatever they are becoming more and more active. So that's a component. And there is a different level of awareness among people. As I said earlier, the increase in interest in the paranormal in general, I think it's made people a little bit more aware. There's always a positive and negative side to it. A lot of people would argue, well, people are matrixing, they're making things up, they're hoaxing more. Well, that's a component of it. But on the other side, people have shifted their consciousness, and whereas, my parents would have blocked things like this out of their consciousness because it just, it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't part of the acceptable paradigm at the time. But now everyone's interested. So there is that increased level of awareness that comes with that, and an increased level of willingness for people to talk about these things.
Now, in your book, you devote a whole chapter to a story about a woman who had an experience with black-eyed children and actually let them in. Can you share a little about that incident to our listeners?
Yes, you're referring to, sure, let me clarify that story. This woman, it was actually her son who invited the child in.
Right.
What happened was this woman, she was in a small town. She was driving home in her SUV and had her young son in the back seat. Stopped by a convenience store, which was a regular stop for her. She would often stop by on her way home from work and run in for bread or milk or whatever. And on this particular occasion, she pulled up, parked right in front, left her son in the SUV, darted into the store and grabbed her milk and came back out. Got in the SUV, reached down to turn the key and looked in the rearview mirror, and staring back at her was a boy with solid black eyes. This boy was in the middle of the back seat beside her son. She had an immediate fear reaction. She leapt out of the SUV and she jerked the back door open and yanked her son out and ran back in the convenience store. The clerk in the store, of course, saw the woman rushing in and thought, oh my God, what's wrong? She's in a panic, and she's kind of stuttering and stammering that somebody's in her car, and he runs outside thinking, is this a robbery or an attempted carjacking, or what's going on? He runs outside. There's the SUV with both doors standing open, not a sign of anyone around anywhere. And as the story unfolds, I'll skip ahead a little bit. It ended up she was just too terrified to get back in that SUV after what she had seen, and she called her husband and had him come up, and he's trying to calm her down. He says, look, just, take my car, take my truck, and I'll drive the SUV, and just meet me at home. He takes her SUV a couple of miles away, gets in an accident and totals it, ends up in the hospital. Fortunately, he was okay. He had some minor injuries that kept him for observation. During the course of all of this unfolding, she ended up having a conversation with her son, and she said, who is that little boy? Did you know him from school? And he says, no, Mommy. And so, well, why'd you let him in? Well, he asked to come to my house. I thought we could play. Now, this is a 10-year-old boy, so, he doesn't know any better. He's seen a potential playmate, has the dialogue unfolded, he really didn't relate that he thought there was anything unusual about the boy. He obviously didn't have the kind of fear reaction that his mother did, and just assumed that this was another little kid that could come home and play with him. And as a little bit of time went by, her son became very ill, and in fact was ill for quite some time. The doctors were very puzzled because when she took him into the hospital, they thought he had the flu, and then they thought he had possibly appendicitis. It was very strange because his symptoms actually rotated and changed. At one point he broke out, and they thought he had the measles. They just couldn't explain what was wrong with this little boy. And the parents, the mother especially, firmly believes that it was an encounter with something that was evil, and that only through a lot of prayer from herself and the family was this boy able to finally be well again and to be healthy. And so, up until this time, he's still healthy. But it was a very frightening encounter for this family. And that is, from the cases I've documented, that is the one case I have found where someone actually issued the invitation that these children are asking for and allowed this boy entrance. And that's the result that we get.
Has that been the only story that you've found to be worth commenting and sort of worth putting in your book? Or has there been others that, either still are investigation or a possibility? Is there anything else that's out there that you can sort of comment on?
Yeah, there are a few others. There are some others that with these particular cases, I really take a long time. I verify as much of the information as I possibly can. I interview the people on multiple occasions. And there have been a few other cases where supposedly an invitation was issued. I haven't published them because either the information was too scant or there were possible holes in the story. There's a very fascinating story that, unfortunately, I can't tell you a lot of the details. I really wanted to get it into the book, and in fact, I delayed the book a little bit because I was hoping to get this man's story in. But there were just too many details to get him to a level of being comfortable with. But he was an ex-serviceman, and the story that happened with him was that he was living with his sister and her husband, and they were really interested in the paranormal and listened to podcasts all the time. And he wasn't really interested in it and mostly just ignored it. And they happened to listen to an interview I did one day when he walked in the room about the black-eyed children, and she said, she's telling me on the phone, she said, I have never seen my brother look like this. He dropped the coffee cup he was holding, and he turned very pale, and he left the room. And it was only through, a lot of conversation with him and finally convincing him to talk to me, the story started to come out that during his time in Iraq, he had encountered a black-eyed child. And the frightening part of the story was that the other men who were with him during the encounter out of the group, I think there were 5 of them total, he was the only one who survived to make it home.
Wow.
The others were all killed during the conflict. So, you know, he was very convinced that these things were, you know, the particular one that he had seen was, he almost felt like perhaps they had been cursed, or, you know, war breeds a lot of superstitions and a lot of strange feelings, and you know, that was something that happened with him. He was having a very difficult time moving beyond it, and I'm hoping that I can publish a story at some point. He's just very conscious of, you know, not wanting to disrespect anyone's memory and just wanting to make sure the story can be told without anyone being upset about it.
Right.
But it was a very intriguing and disturbing encounter at the same time. There actually are a number of encounters of people who have not invite them in, but have a close encounter with these kids that end up having, you know, a series of very unfortunate things happen to them.
Now, you mentioned a mom, you mentioned a military man, and I've heard stories like this and read it all over the internet. Do you feel that they sort of pick and choose, you know, like how they say evil sort of preys on the weak? Do you think that there's some sort of agenda, or do you think that, or in addition to that, do you think that they seek out certain types of individuals, or is it just a broad spectrum? There's no sort of rules.
No, I think there are specific individuals at this point, and I'll tell you why. During my research of all these cases, I was very surprised at the number. You know, I always look for patterns, and, you know, of course, in this day and age, one of the things you look for, okay, you know, someone's reporting seeing a full-bodied apparition to me. Is this someone who sits around watching all the paranormal shows, or are they, you know, they really looking for this and trying to find it? So, you know, you always look for those patterns, and a couple of the patterns that came up during my research of these cases was that, one, the bulk of these people who have these encounters are not interested in the paranormal at all. Some of the ones that were interested, it was to a very minor degree. You know, they might have a brother or a sister or something who was interested in the field. So that was one thing that stood out, but the thing that really stood out was that there are an unusual number of cases where the person encountering the black-eyed children is some type of authority figure, whether it's law enforcement, military, you know, doctors, nurses, people that we typically would put into an authoritative role, seem to be having these encounters a bit more than, you know, blue-collar workers or you know, plumbers and electricians and so forth. So that was very curious to me. And, you know, I'm not sure exactly why that is. I mean, you know, these are people that you would not expect to be, they're very no-nonsense. You know, they're not people who would be prone to imagining these things or looking for these kind of encounters. So that's a very curious aspect that I'm still exploring.
Well, one of the things that actually just came to mind right now when you were describing that is, you know, basically they're mostly authority figures. It may go back to, you know, their conversations with these black-eyed children, what they're saying to these victims or eyewitnesses. They're basically asking them a question, either to come in or go with them. And so I guess the witness or the eyewitness or victim is in the position to have to make a decision. And so if you're an authority figure, that's what you have to do. And that just clicked in my head as you were saying that, and that could be a relation to it, basically.
Yeah, that could be one possibility, sure. I was on Dreamland with Whitley Strieber a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things we got into during part of that interview was, you know, how many of these people are not remembering everything from the encounter. And that gets into some pretty scary territory. You know, when you start looking at alien abductions, one of the classic things that happens in those cases is that the person, you know, remembers seeing an owl is one of the classic images, and
right.
it replaces in their memory what they actually saw. So, the question becomes, did they actually let these children in, and are they just not remembering what unfolded afterwards? It's very interesting that most of these people, I've asked quite a few of the witnesses, and people are not willing to be hypnotized or regress to that encounter because they're doing everything they can to forget it and move past it. The last thing they want to do is go under hypnosis and relive the experience again because it was so terrifying.
Right.
So it's a little bit different, in the alien abduction stories, we get people that can't remember everything and they want to be put under hypnosis in order to understand, what the missing pieces are. But in these cases, people are convinced that they remember everything that happened, and they don't want to remember it. They want to move beyond it.
David, we have a couple callers. Would you mind taking some calls?
Oh, sure. Put them on.
Okay. Our first caller is Noah. Hi, Noah.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, David. Hi, Anthony. How are you?
Hi, Noah.
Great, Noah. Thanks for calling.
I'm very intrigued. I've never heard of this. I'm actually very intrigued with this whole concept. And David, it's very refreshing to hear that your studies are cross-cultural. It's not simply a local thing. You've looked at the possibility of it being Jinn. You've talked about the possibility of it being, an evil spirit, and you've also talked about hungry ghosts, as mentioned in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And the one commonality, and again, I'm just going by what I've heard so far tonight. I've yet to read your book, and I will be reading it, is you mention affluent people, and you also mention the veteran being victims of these attacks. Did I hear you correctly on that?
That's correct.
Okay, because in this, that would be consistent with your cross-cultural analysis, because in Tibetan Buddhism and other types of Mahayana Buddhism, hungry ghosts are representatives of greed. They're representative of an insatiable appetite.
That's
these
correct.
Are affluent people that have maybe abused their power. Perhaps these hungry ghosts are manifestations of their own need, of their own insatiable appetite. With the Jinn, where you mentioned the man being...
Hello?
I'm not sure what happened to the caller. Hello, Noah, are you still there?
Of a demon or diabolical possession.
Noah, we lost you for a second. Did you just ask a question? Noah, are you still there? Okay, I think we lost him.
And the last thing I heard was something about the Jinn. Yeah, to address a little bit of what he was saying, I heard him commenting about the hungry ghost, and that's absolutely a possibility. It's explored in the book. They very well could be a manifestation of something that is coming from our collective consciousness. Also, something else I address in the book is tulpas, which are essentially a type of thought form, and we just don't know. One of the fascinating things, as I said earlier, about this phenomena is that it does share traits with a lot of different paranormal manifestations. So we just have to keep studying and keep looking at the new cases that are reported.
Right. Lucy, do we have any other callers?
Yeah, we have Scotty. Hi, Scotty.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, Anthony. Hey, David.
Hey, Scotty.
How you doing? I've got a question for you. And this, a lot like Noah's questions before you lost him, you had mentioned, of course, earlier the Jinn and the possible connections there. It seems to me, in research I've done on ancient cultures, I just talked to Whitley Strieber a couple of weeks ago, and he spoke very highly of your book. I talked to Barry Fitzgerald the other day. He spoke very highly of your book. And all of these guys are all bringing up, along with even some research I've done, and it seems all this research out there in these fields are starting to merge at the edges. And when you mention the Jinn, because they are such an ancient, for lack of a better word, diabolical caste that's been almost associated with the demons type of thing, you've got all these different cultures that talk of all these different kinds of beings that are either bound to the earth or are earth types of beings. It gets connected to alien visitation, non-human entities. In your research, have you found that connectivity? Are you finding that these are maybe just a different manifestation of the same kinds of things that people have been experiencing all through time and all through these different cultures and religions? And I know Noah was pointing out that you had mentioned the affluent as well as the authority figures, but even take that aside, just the fact that these beings exist, are they merging or crossing lines and merging with a lot of these other things that people are starting to discover? It's almost like, I hate using the word awakenings, but there's this big thing that seems to be going on out there that's uncovering all these kinds of beings that all seem to kind of cross at the edges. What have you found in your research on this?
Man, what a great question. First of all, let me throw in there for people who don't recognize the voice, that is Scotty Roberts, publisher of Intrepid Magazine. And Scotty just put an incredible book out himself. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim. I'd encourage all of you to read it because you can't put it down. I know I couldn't when I got it. So to answer your question, Scotty, here's the funny thing. Being involved in the paranormal for so long, when I first got involved in the field, you said the word paranormal and people knew it meant UFOs and cryptozoology and haunted sites and all of it, because back then that's what it was. You studied it all in a holistic manner. So that's my root. That's where I come from. And adding in my cultural studies, I try to look at all of these things across the board. I think what's happened in the past 20 years or so, people really got away from that because along with the opening interest in the paranormal came all the organizations, and with that came all the politics, and all of a sudden we had a situation where the Bigfoot people didn't want to hear anything about a Bigfoot encounter if there was a UFO involved. And, the UFO people didn't want to hear anything about a UFO sighting at a haunted location. And it's absurd. Right. All these people wanted to classify themselves as only a ufologist or only a cryptozoologist. You get away from the fact that there are places on this planet where a whole wide range of weird things are happening. Why? Why at a particular location are there cryptid encounters and UFO sightings and poltergeist and everything else? We have to look at all of this stuff in a holistic manner and look at it all as one big package. So to answer your question, Scotty, absolutely, yes, that is what I believe. And that was one of the reasons I wrote the book the way I did, because I want people to think about, here is a strange phenomena that's growing very rapidly, and it has connections to a wide range of paranormal phenomena through the ages. There's something much deeper going on here. And it's we could get into very broad connections because, people's awareness is opening up, but we're also coming to a point where, we're having a planetary shift in consciousness. So, right. Yes, there is something much more intense going on here, and we have to look at it cross-culturally, and we have to look at it from many different directions, not just from behind a pane of glass.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Sure.
Do you think that these black-eyed children, would you classify them purely in the evil category for a sake of pigeonholing them, or would you find that, and this is not a leading question, I'm just curious your thinking process on this, are they in that purely evil category, or are they like a lot of these other things that are crossing over, like, you know, you see UFO sightings are big where they now have Bigfoot sightings, they're finding all kinds of correlations, things like that, yet they aren't all necessarily evil, but they all aren't necessarily good. Have you found in any of your research on the black-eyed children, do they remain in that dark, demonic type of category, or have you ever found that they cross over a bit and there might be something else more positive going on? Now, I'm not looking for the woo-woo here, like, you know, I don't sit in my black T-shirt in my mom's basement waiting for the aliens to abduct me. But no offense to guys who wear black T-shirts and live in their mom's basement. But, you know, there are people who believe it's all benevolent, and then there are people who believe it's all evil. Do you think this crosses over? Have you seen any kind of evidence that would say otherwise?
I think it does cross over some. I think one of the problems we have here is that whatever their agenda is something we don't understand. So our perception of it being completely sinister could be a lack of understanding on our parts. That being said, there are clearly some cases that did not turn out well for the people involved. But it's hard to say that, you know, this is something that these children intentionally tried to do. You know, even there are some indications that these black-eyed children are some kind of an omen. Now, you know, is an omen positive or negative? Well, it depends on how you deal with the information that's received.
And what you do with it. Yeah.
And what you do with it. And what's interesting is that a large portion of these cases, the people who have had the encounters end up turning to spiritual pursuits. Now, I think that's a positive result out of what they're perceiving as a negative event. So
have you heard of any stories where people have actually let them in and have gone further with their encounters with them?
I have not. I've received some stories like that. They border on you know,
they want to impregnate me and take me to their benevolent home planet. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and you get into, you know, what I call the fluffy bunny world, you know, and that there's a certain percentage of people out there that want to perceive anything paranormal as absolutely positive and benevolent, and, you know, when they're not on the roof waiting for the Space Brothers to come down and absolve them of their credit card debt, they're waiting by the door for the black-eyed kids to come in. So, you know, it's hard to answer that to a greater depth at this time, just because, you know, how many stories are out there that we don't know all the details about.
Right. Well, great book. Thanks for writing it. Great topic.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for calling in, Scotty.
Scotty, can I ask you a question?
Talk to you later. Oh, yes,
Scotty,
sir.
are you still there? Can I ask you a question?
I am. Sure.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh boy!
What do you believe that these children are?
Oh man! You know, the greatest source book I've had on the black-eyed children is David's book, and I had heard absolutely nothing about them prior to reading David's book. But the thoughts that come to my mind in some of the research I'm doing, I find that there are so many things that we are familiar with in that kind of gray zone of life, those things that people either want to pass off or poo-poo as being weird, or you're weird if you believe in it, kind of topics, that paranormal stuff, if you will. I have found that these things, as I'm researching them in the ancient past, have such connections to things we are familiar with that it starts to look like the things we're familiar with maybe have a different tone to them altogether, if I'm making sense there. Let me just, I'll cut to the quick on that. I did a lot of my research on my stuff in biblical topics, but then I took it outside to outside cultures of the day and found out that man, some of the stuff you read about biblically has stuff that was written thousands of years prior to the Bible being written that have very similar stories. So I would say David, in writing about this book, and I guess this is the stuff I was trying to ask him about too, is my opinion on it is that it's all one and the same. It's all starting to meld together, and there's more than just one thing. There's more than just aliens. There's more than just ghosts. There's more than just interdimensional beings. There's more than just these things like Barry Fitzgerald talked about in the caverns and in the depths. He just wrote a book, The Mist of Gods, and he's talking about the things that are under our feet, the things that come from within the earth, and how many connections there are to ancient times about that, and how many connections there are to the big, and David can talk about this too, the big black glossy-eyed type of creature or being, and how that correlates with so many other mythologies and so many other beings that are out there, that it's not a singular thing. And so my opinion is that they exist. I no longer doubt very much of anything these days. I've never encountered one and probably don't ever want to. But how much mythology was built off of the same types of things that these black-eyed children, and David brought this up, the things that they do are so linked into, just look at the old legends of vampirism. You know, you had to invite it in order for it to have any power. Demonics, the same thing. You have to invite them in. They can't just take you over. And how all this is linked on the evil side of things. So, yeah, and I'll stop talking. This is you're talking to David, but my opinion is he's onto something here, because it merges with so many other things that are out there. So yeah, my simple answer would have been yes. I'm like David. I'm a writer. I have to say in 10,000 words what another guy could say in 20 minutes. So
we love it. We love it.
I was saying too. You know, Scotty's talking about some of the other ancient connections. I mean, there's a chapter in the book about black-eyed angels. You know, there's a whole sort of subculture out there of people who believe they've had encounters with Azrael, the angel of death, and a lot of those depictions, he's depicted as, you know, having solid black eyes, and he's coming in to take someone's soul away. And
this was one of the. I'm sorry. I was going to say this is one of the things I was talking to Adam Bly, who is very into Roman Catholicism and exorcism and demonology from that respect, but he mentioned that in Catholic theology, one of the earmarks of physically identifying the demonics or the evil was that they did not have the ability to fully manifest in full human form, and there was always something missing, like they were missing a limb or something. But one of the greatest characteristics was the blacked out, hollowed out eyes. And this was an earmark of a lot of the evil spirits or the evil entities, the demonics, if you will. So I think that correlates very well. Are they perfect correlations? I don't think so, but they overlap so closely you have to ask the question.
Right, there's some sort of connection there. There has to be.
Well, thanks for writing the book again, David. Great book. And cool.
Thanks, Scotty.
All right, talk to you later.
Thank you, Scotty.
Scotty, thank you for calling.
Okay, David, Lucy and I like to have a little fun and sort of try and lighten up the interview process by playing a game with our guests. So I hope that you're up to this tonight. Our listeners like it, and it also allows us to get to know you as a guest a little bit better. So, but, you know, sort of in a fun way. Are you up for some fun tonight?
Well, I suppose so.
Okay. All right, here it is.
I mean, it's loaded, you know. You're not really telling me what this game is.
It's painless, I promise. All right, so tonight we've come up with a new game called This or That. I'm going to give you two choices, and your job is to pick which one you would rather see at your doorstep. Maybe think about it as maybe think about it as which one you would rather see and maybe less dangerous, or which one would you be more interested to physically see in person. Okay? All right, the first one is black-eyed children or Bigfoot.
I'd have to say Bigfoot.
Okay. Bigfoot or a full spirit apparition?
I'm going to stick with Bigfoot because I've seen some manifestations of ghosts before, so I'll stick with Bigfoot.
Okay. Black-eyed children or the ghost of Thomas Jefferson?
Oh, the ghost of Thomas Jefferson.
Black-eyed children or the entire cast of the original Star Trek?
The cast of Star Trek, hands down.
Good man.
Okay. All right. Here's this one. Take this one. All 13 crystal skulls or black-eyed children?
Oh, the crystal skulls.
My man. Alien or Bigfoot?
I think I'll go with an alien on that.
Okay. Black-eyed children.
Involved.
I'm sorry, say that again?
As long as there's no probing involved.
All right. Black-eyed children or the group Black-eyed Peas?
That's a tough choice. I guess I'll begrudgingly go with the Black-eyed Peas.
Really? Okay. An alien, no probing, or black-eyed children?
The alien.
Nostradamus or Edgar Cayce?
Nostradamus.
Okay. And the last one, a Mayan tribe leader or Geronimo the Apache medicine and prophet seer?
Geronimo.
Anthony, if you asked me, I would rather see anything but those black-eyed children. You know, they just creep me out so much more than any apparition or Bigfoot. Actually, I'd rather see Bigfoot. But seriously, this has been so much fun, David. We do want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. And can you tell our listeners where they can see more of your work?
Sure. You can follow my blog at twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com. Spell out the two, T-W-O, Crows Paranormal. You can buy the book directly from leprechaunpress.com, and anyone who buys it there gets a signed copy. It's also available on Amazon. And, gosh, I'm all over the place this year at some of the major events. I'll be at the Sacramento UFO Paranormal Summit in June. That's going to be an amazing event. A lot of great people there. Bill Murphy from Factor Fate, Paul Bradford from GHI, Anthony Sanchez, Scotty Roberts, who called in earlier, will be there. It's an amazing group of people. I'll also be at, the historic Alamo UFO Conference at the end of this month. I'll be at Wake Up Now. And this is not even announced anywhere yet, but it is official. I'll be appearing at Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky at the end of September, and that is an incredible event. Anyone who's never been to it, you have no idea what you're missing. I'd encourage you all to go on and check it out. And the paranormal guests there this year are amazing. A good portion of GHI is going to be there. Josh Gates from Destination Truth. It's an incredible lineup. So that's a few of the spots I'll be in. Like I said, the blog is the best way to keep up with me. I welcome people on Facebook. There's a tag right on the blog to go to my Facebook page if you want to friend me on there. I'm on Twitter, Two Crows Para. You can pretty much find me all over the internet at this point. And, of course, as mentioned earlier, I write for Intrepid Magazine.
Well, David, thank you for being our guest tonight on Paranormal Review Radio. It has been great talking with you. We really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for writing this book because like Luci and I was saying earlier in the show, that we did a previous show on this back in 2011, and there was nothing out there. There was nothing as so comprehensive as the information that you have in your book that really educated us, and that's why I wanted to do this show. That's why Luci and I just wanted to have you on and discuss this topic again, because I think your book just explains it all. You give stories, you explain it. It's just amazing. I highly recommend everybody go out and get this book. So thank you so much for writing the book and for coming on our show tonight. Thank you, David.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for reading it, and thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, David. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, you guys too. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
That was David Weatherly, everyone.
That was great.
And Scotty Roberts.
Yeah,
look
that
here.
was... that was awesome.
That is awesome. All right, so everyone out there and in chat, give us a call and let us know what you would do if you saw one of these at your doorstep. Or have you had an experience that may qualify as a black-eyed children experience? Call us, 661-244-9831. Okay, Lucy, I'm going to pose the question to you. What would you do if you opened your front door right now and saw black-eyed children standing there?
I'd close it. You know, I don't know. I mean, my first thought, and going back to what we said before about the cell phone and the cameras, if I could possibly run and grab that cell phone camera, I want to take a picture. I want to see if it'll happen. But then again, after all the stories of the paralyzing fear, I don't know what I'd do. I really don't know. What about...
Well, you know, it's... Go ahead.
Anthony, what would you do?
You know, it's hard. It's one thing to say, you know, right now without the presence of them in front of you what you would do. But from all the stories that we've read and the people that we've talked to on the topic of black-eyed children is that, and we just talked about this before with David, that, you know, it's sort of that paralyzing feeling that comes over you or that they're portraying onto you that you can't do anything else. You can't move. You can't think. You know, it's sort of... you know, just picture it. It's sort of like in that state of sleep and not sleeping, you know. You're trying to pull yourself away or wake up or go back to sleep. You don't know what can happen. I mean, if I had the energy to do it, I wouldn't close the door, as weird as that may sound, but I would, as a paranormal investigator, I would try and find out what they are. You know, I'm always trying to find an answer. But I certainly would not let them in. I don't think I can go that far because, again, I don't think I've heard any story firsthand as to what has happened after they've walked in the door and spent a week, you know. So I wouldn't let them in, but I would try and find out, you know, what they were, basically.
Well, I think we have a couple callers. Do you want to take a call?
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Let's go to, hello, area code 408. Hello, you're on the air with Anthony and Luci.
Hi, Miss Anthony. Hi, Mr. Luci. How are you guys doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. I just had a quick question. I remember you guys' first show on the Black Eyed Kids was probably the second or third show I listened to. And I didn't think anybody would be able to compare it to all the information you guys gathered. I just wanted to very quickly ask what you guys think they are. Because of everything I've read about them, when people talk about them, they're terrified of them. So obviously, for a lot of people, either they think and believe or it is a true phenomenon. What do you guys think they are?
Lucy, why don't you go first?
You know what? I'm leaning more towards the evil, only from the description of the paralyzing fear, and going back to what both Scotty and David mentioned about, you know, how something evil doesn't manifest totally. So I am really, really leaning towards evil, like maybe some kind of demonic entity. And only because, too, the other part about it is, why would they manifest into a child? What is the first thing, you know, as human beings, your trust, if you see a child, you're more likely to trust a child. So if there's some kind of negative or ulterior motive, what's the best way for me to get to you? It's to come in the form of a child.
Absolutely.
That's my theory. Anthony, what about you?
I agree with you. I think it I mean, obviously, I don't have all of the information. I haven't fully researched it like David has, but I really do believe that they are some sort of evil entity. And as Scotty and David were talking about, that, you know, who's to say that, you know, and it has happened in the past and in previous experiences, that evil has taken many different forms, not just one. And so who's to say now that this isn't just a new sort of manifestation that they've created to break down, you know, the sort of trust or the belief that we've had to, again, try and get in and try and corrupt our lives or corrupt the world. I really do think that it has some sort of evil connotation to it. Now, what it is, what physically are these children, I don't know. You know, I've heard a lot of stories, and I've read this online a lot too, that also, besides being an alien hybrid or jinn or interdimensional beings, I've also heard that they could be time travelers, some sort of time traveler. And, I'm not sure if I believe that or not, but, you know, there are, again, so many different things that you can tag to these quote-unquote black-eyed children that it's too new to sort of definitively say what they are. But as a, paranormal investigator, as we've always done and have always experienced in the past, is, you know, whenever evil wants to come and try and take over you or absorb your power, they always come in the form of a child. And Mark and Debbie Constantino had said that on a previous show that we have done. And, that's the first thing that they try and do, is try and lower your guard with this quote-unquote children aspect and try and get you to sort of relate to them and bring them in and comfort them in, and then they'll unleash whatever it is that they want to unleash. But, in a nutshell, that's sort of my opinion on it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with. I just tend to agree with both of you. If something's going to come to you as something as disarming as a child, I mean, I'm a dad. If I open a door and there's a child that needed help, my first instinct, even if I saw his black eyes, I'd be like, "Holy crap, are you okay? What's with your eyes?"
Right.
I wouldn't be so offset, but still, like you guys mentioned and Mr. David had mentioned, there's so many things that black-eyed entities or beings have to do with negative things, to where Anthony said he wouldn't close the door. You got more sand than me, sir. I would have slammed the door in their face.
That was
you know what? I say that now, I'm behind a computer desk right now talking to you, but who knows what will happen when I actually, if I actually see one in front of me,
Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much, you guys. Thanks for another great show.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care, you guys.
Good night. Anthony, was that Mateo?
I don't know. That was Mateo.
Was.
Mateo, if that was you, email us. All right, do we have any other callers?
No, we don't have anybody in the queue right now. But if you do have a story, or if you've got a theory on this, give us a call. It's 661-244-9831. Okay.
Great. Okay. So why don't we move on? What else are we going to discuss tonight, Luci?
Okay, well, instead of doing news tonight, I was thinking let's share with everyone what we got coming up on future shows. But you guys, please, feel free to call in still if you want to share some of your thoughts on the Black-Eyed Kids, okay? Anthony, what do you think?
We have some really great shows lined up for you guys.
Yep. Well, we have been working our butts off to get you some great shows. And actually, we're proud to say that we've been able to top our previous shows with what we've got coming up. So if you liked us before, you're going to love some of our future shows. Well, at least we hope you love them.
All right, so Luci, tell us what's coming up in the near future.
Okay, well, in the near future, May 25th, we're going to have tarot readings, and by me. As you all may know, from our Facebook page, from my Facebook page, I am a tarot card reader. I've been doing readings for the last 20 years. I actually have felt the pull to really start getting into it again and start doing it. So I do have a website, and if you want to stop by and check it out, it is www.story-within.com. And you can go there and you can check it out, and it tells a little bit more about me, a little bit more about what I do. And if you want to get a reading, you can contact me through the webpage. I've also got a Facebook page, and it's Tarot, The Story Within, and we have the link on our page, and I'll put it on my page. But that's going to be on May 25th. So if you want a tarot card reading from me, make sure you call the show that night, okay? And actually, we'll be doing that show live from Philadelphia, because that leads into our next show, which is the Eastern State Investigation and Follow-Up Show. That's going to be on June 1st. Anthony and I, we actually had the opportunity to first go to Eastern State in 2011. It was in June 2010. Oh, my God. It's been so long. And actually, that's where I met Anthony, and it was a Darkness Radio event, and we actually got to go to Eastern State for the first time. Well, we're going back there. We had so much fun the first time. On that first investigation was actually really, really awesome. Anthony, you had an amazing experience there. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, very quickly, because it was a Dave Schrader event, Darkness Radio event, you get to go with a group. There was a lot of people, and but one of the great opportunities that they give to guests is to bid on an auction to actually do a private investigation with the guys from Ghost Adventures, and I bid on it and actually won with a few other people. So after the whole mass investigation that went with everybody that had gone there that weekend, it was myself, it was two other guests, and then it was Aaron, Nick, Zach, Mark and Debbie Constantino, Aaron Sagers, and I think that was it. And we got to actually investigate Eastern State Penitentiary by ourselves, and we went to a couple of locations. You only got about a 2-hour time frame to do this, so it was maybe, I think, from 1 a.m. till 3 a.m. And during the one part of the investigation, I was in cell block 12 with Aaron, Zach, and Billy Tolley was there, actually. And we actually got to investigate cell block 12, and that's where I first saw my first black shadow apparition. And it was amazing to me. I loved that place. That place was calling for us everywhere we went. And you had some crazy things happening to you, right?
Yes. I mean, honestly, this was my first event. It was really the first time that I'd ever gone paranormal investigating, and I actually got touched on my first, they took us down into an area which they call the Hole. And actually, I think this event was the first time that they had opened up this area. And I'm down there. I have no clue. I had no clue whatsoever what to expect. We're all standing there in the dark, doing an EVP session. I'm leaning with my hand up on like a pole. No one else is near me. And I feel just like someone takes a finger and just almost like a caress up and down my left arm. Well, of course, I'm right away, and I'm in the dark, and I'm like, hey, did somebody just touch me? And the answer was, no, you're standing there by yourself. So that was my first experience as being touched by something. In addition to that, of course, the first of many of these experiences, which Anthony can attest to, I had my camera battery drained. I have a problem with batteries when we go investigating. For some reason, spirits love to drain my batteries. So those were just a couple.
Renee Stillwell in the chat right now is going to get this joke. I always say that, Luci, you are a sponge for these spirits. You attract them, and they take everything out of you. They just soak all the water right out of you, and all the energy and anything that you have, whether it's a camera or what, it's dead within 5-10 minutes. So I don't know if it's you doing it or if it's the spirits doing it.
No, but I can't wait to get back there. So June 1st, we're going to be there on May 26th, and what we'll do is on June 1st, we are going to recap the investigation. We'll do our follow-up, and just a couple quick points. You know, this is the world's first true penitentiary. It opened in 1829. It closed in 1970. Al Capone was an inmate there, and like Anthony mentioned, Cell Block 12 and death row are extremely active. I can say that the night that we were there, we got some amazing EVPs with Mark and Debbie Constantino. In death row, we were there with Aaron Goodwin, and I witnessed a girl get touched really, really to the point where she was really upset, to the point where she had to leave the area. And I think also, too, up in Cell Block 12, there was, that night, there was, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a woman that had gotten actually scratched, and it looked like there was a bite mark on her shoulder. And that happened, I think it was Cell Block 12. So there's a lot of activity there.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was, I can't remember that story, but just to add to this, the reason why we didn't say that we are going to do a live investigation at this place is because we're not able to do one. We have a short window of opportunity, and with setup and everything, it would take too long. But that doesn't mean that we don't have an investigation coming up where we are going to do something live, which we are going to do that, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to get to the next one, which is the week after that, which is June 8th. This one is a favorite of mine. I'm going to say this name. I'm not sure if everybody knows her name, but I'm sure once I do, everybody's going to Google it. The name is Carmen Reed. Carmen Reed. If anybody in chat knows who that is, just right off the bat, maybe type it in before I go any further. Just curious to see who actually knows who Carmen Reed is. I'll just keep going anyway. I'll give you another hint. The movie, The Haunting in Connecticut. We are going to speak on June 8th live with Carmen Reed, who is the mother who lived through the real story that the movie, The Haunting in Connecticut, was based on. I'm really excited. It took a while to actually get Carmen to agree. She's a very busy lady. And so there were a couple of dates. We were trying to get her on earlier, but we finally confirmed her for June 8th. So I am really excited. We're going to interview her about how she lived through that horror. And she was actually also if you want to call it a consultant while they were making the movie. And so we want to sort of get her take on how that process was and discuss some of the skeptics out there, the naysayers that don't believe her story. Believe it or not, there are a lot of people out there that do not believe her or the story itself. So we want to sort of get to the bottom of that and find out what she's encountered and, what kind of struggle it was for her. And, finding out how her life is now. And, if everybody remembers the movie, they moved to this home which they did not know was previously a funeral home because their son was stricken with cancer, and they had to move closer to the medical facility. And so they had to rent this home in order to be able to go through chemo for their son. And what progressed was a progression of hauntings that just took over the entire family. So maybe before June 8th, everybody go out and download or grab a copy of The Haunting in Connecticut if you have not seen it already, and watch it, and then join us on June 8th while we talk to Carmen Reed.
That's going to be awesome. I really can't wait to hear about this. It's like I get chills thinking about it. And then...
Well, the next one that we have coming up is really exciting. Tell everybody about this one.
Okay, on June 15th, we are going to have a guest, and I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with this person. If you've seen Ghost Adventures, and in particular, the episode at Bobby Mackey's, we will be talking to Bishop James Long. Bishop Long is very well known. He's very respected in the paranormal community. He is a theologian and a demonologist. He's the presiding Archbishop of the United States Old Catholic Church, and he can be found at St. Christopher Old Catholic Church in Louisville, Kentucky. He has graciously agreed to be our guest, and we're going to spend an evening with him and discuss the paranormal. We're going to discuss demonology. What is, actually,
he's really into the paranormal field. I mean, it's very strange to hear of someone of the Catholic faith to be so into paranormal, the paranormal community, and he has gone on paranormal investigations, and he has done, I don't know if he's done any exorcisms or not, but again, that's something that we're going to find out. He has done some, okay.
Yes, he has
done some. I think it's going to be awesome that we're going to be able to get to talk to him, talk about Bobby Mackey's, one of our favorite places that we've gone to, and talk about demonology, just the whole gamut of it all. So I think it's going to be a really exciting show, Lucy.
So that's going to be on June 15th, so you need to mark your calendars for that. One other name that I want to mention, and that we haven't finalized a date yet, but we're going to be talking to, from 30-odd Minutes and a writer on Ghost Adventures, we're going to be talking to Jeff Belanger. Jeff has agreed to come onto the show and to spend an evening with us. So we're going to talk to him. That's going to be in June, probably towards the end. So July and August, we haven't been confirmed on a lot of things. So if you guys have any ideas, please feel free to email us at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com with some suggestions. I mean, who do you want to hear from? What do you want to talk about? Let us know. Then we have, and I really can't wait for this one, on August 17th, well, actually, Anthony, I want you to talk about this.
Okay. Well, my birthday is in August, and so Lucy has graciously given me my birthday gift a little bit early, and actually, we're going to be sharing it with everybody here. So on August 17th, which I believe is the Friday, we're going to be reviewing the Villisca Axe Murder House, and hopefully. We haven't confirmed this yet, but hopefully we're going to be able to get Johnny Hauser on the air with us to talk about Villisca Axe Murder House. He has been the tour guide there for many, many years. Lucy, who did he just team up with now recently?
Actually, he's just become a full member of Everyday Paranormal with Brad and Barry Kling, and I love those guys. We had the opportunity to investigate with them. He is now a full member of Everyday Paranormal. He's an independent documentary filmmaker. He has appeared on American Ghost Hunter, My Ghost Story. He's been on Ghost Adventures. He's been on Ghost Lab, Ghost Stories. I mean, it's endless. And hopefully we can get Johnny to confirm, and he'll be with us that night to talk about the house. Because on August 19th, oh, sorry.
And he actually lives next door to the Villisca Axe Murder House, so he's, he's got a bucket full of stories that he can tell. But then on August 19th, which is what? Is that the Sunday, Lucy?
The 19th, yes, it is.
That's the Sunday. So August 19th, we're actually going to do a live investigation at Villisca Axe Murder House. We're going to air it online, on the radio, just like what we did at Prospect Place. And we are really excited to go. I've wanted to go to this place forever. I think ever since I heard of Villisca Axe Murder House, I've wanted to go there. So this is going to be a fun night. So, Renee, yes, you are still in the chat. Maybe we're going to give you a call again and you can help play with us that night. So that'll be fun. And then the Friday after that is when we'll do our evidence review like we normally do of what we found, which I can guarantee right now before even going, I know we're going to get so much stuff. So.
Well, this I did do this as a gift for you, Anthony, but I have to confess, I really, really, really want to go to this place. So it kind of like it's just as much for me as it is for you. I mean, just the stories that are coming there, and you know how I was saying that I could feel stuff before we got to Prospect. Ever since I have booked this trip, I am getting feelings already about this house. So I am totally convinced that we will get a whole lot of evidence, and I want to invite everybody to listen to us. Join us when we're going to broadcast live, because I'm just positive that we're going to get some really interesting and probably scary stuff.
And I'm not one to provoke when going in locations or at investigations. I don't like to do that so much unless I know, truly what the place is. And if it is truly full of evil or there is evil in there, I will provoke. I don't want them there, and I don't like them being there, especially at Villisca Axe Murder, where this evil entity is there, and the members of 8 members of a family. Well, there were, I think, 6, and then 2 were friends of the family that were murdered by this person at this home. And so I am definitely going to provoke at this place, and it's going to be a little bit different than what we did at Prospect Place. It's going to get a little dirty. It's going to get a little loud. So it's going to be a little bit interesting, so I hope you guys tune in that night. And
just on a note, too, remember, we did have Cheryl Patton on with us to do the numerology readings. So before we get there, I actually want to do a little bit of research, and she said that with the names and birth dates of the people that were involved in this tragedy, that she might be able to give us a little bit more background, which will probably help us when we're there to investigate. So as you guys probably already know, before we do go to a spot, we really do our research so that whatever we can use, whatever that we can find out that will help us get activity, we're going to try it.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to bring some trigger objects to help us along with that too. So it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so moving on. This is where we promote and highlight fellow paranormal investigators from around the world. We've already mentioned groups from the West Coast, the East Coast, and from Canada. So why hasn't your group been mentioned on our show? What are you waiting for? Just send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com with my promo in the subject line. Be sure to include your group's name, all the names of your members, and any interesting facts about your group or any of your investigations. We'd love to give back to the paranormal community. And in doing this, we hope that this helps your group and your mission to get out there in the public for everyone to notice. So tonight we actually have 2 paranormal groups to promote, and the first is Living Proof Paranormal. Now, Living Proof Paranormal is dedicated to helping those in need of answers to any claims of paranormal activity. Their service is 100% free and is completely confidential. They are located in Arvada, Colorado, but they serve all of Colorado. You can find them on Facebook, Living Proof Paranormal. They're also on Twitter, Living Proof Para, and their official site is site.google.com/site, S-I-T-E, /Living Proof Paranormal. We're actually going to post this on our Facebook page, so if you want any more information, you can check that later on tonight or tomorrow, and we'll have all of this contact information for you. The founder and lead investigator is Chad Bagley. Contact info is gregbags@yahoo.com. Investigator and techie Clayton T. Investigator and sensitive Nicole T. Brenda is the Brenda S.C., investigator and spiritual advisor, and Rihanna W. is an investigator.
Finally, finally we have the Reaper team, and that stands for Ritual Effect Arizona Paranormal Entity Research Team. They're a small paranormal investigating group, and they're out of Phoenix, Arizona. They have over 5 years of experience investigating the paranormal, and their mission is to seek out and investigate paranormal claims and also debunk claims whenever they can at no cost to the customer. The members include Virgil and Michelle Stevens, Jill Reagan, Brandy Campbell, Kenny Larson. And Virgil Stevens will actually be appearing on My Ghost Story soon, along with a member of Hotel San Carlos, which is one of the places they have investigated. So you need to go and you need to check them out at reaperteam.com. And that's all one word, reaperteam.com. Okay, so now here's my favorite part of the show. And I would like to introduce or announce the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week, our fan is from Waverly, New York, and it is Lisa Cheranowski. Yay!
Yay!
Lisa is, as I said, she's from Waverly, New York. A little bit of something about Lisa. She likes Poison. She likes Def Leppard and Motley Crue. She's a fan of the Buffalo Sabres and the Buffalo Bills. Congratulations, Lisa. Thank you so much for your support. We love you. So, excuse me. So that's it. Another wonderful show. I have to go lock my doors now. I don't want those black-eyed kids coming in, okay? Anthony, thank you again for helping to make this show so awesome. Thank you to all of our listeners. You know, we really do this show for you. We appreciate your support so much. If you like the show, please spread the word, okay? And next week, we're going to take you on a journey, okay? And that journey, we're going to take you right into my hometown, Chicago. We're going to travel back in time, too. We're going to go back to the Chicago World's Fair. Now, imagine getting some information that you might be related to one of the worst serial killers of all time. You realize that you are a descendant from a man that is possibly one of the most evil people to walk the earth. Well, our guest next week did find that out. Jeff Mudgett, the author of the best-selling book Bloodstains, will be joining us. We're going to be discussing the story that has shocked and terrified Chicago. And this story is still unfolding today. Jeff will share the story of Herman Mudgett, who is also known as H.H. Holmes. You won't want to miss this show, okay? So on that note, have a paranormal week, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Paranormal